By the end of this lesson, you're going to be playing that, and that's this technique where we're using palm muting along with the thumb, index and middle fingers. It's a really interesting technique. We'll go through it. This is the first line we're going to do. We're just going to use the thumb. Probably better in context with the drum beat. So first things first, what you want is this fleshy part of your palm here to be held just in front of the bridge. Too much palm muting, if you press down too much, it's going to completely choke the string. And if you don't press down enough, you won't get that really cool, decayed, thuddy sound. So you need to experiment here. So just where these bridge saddles are on this Fender Mustang, I'll just go a bit further forward, closer this way. The further across you come, the more it chokes the note. So fairly light touch there. And then for now, we're just concentrating on the thumb. We're not doing anything else. So your thumb is parallel to the string. And you're just using the fleshy part of the thumb to pluck the string. The first bar is just E's, 7th fret of the A string. I'm using my 3rd finger here. And all of those E's that you can see here are on the off beats, so you need to count. So it's 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. Then you drop down to a B on the 7th fret of the A string. More off beats there, and then D, B, fret 5, A string, fret 7, E string. Whole thing in context. Just experiment with where your palm is. You need to relax, try not to have any tension in your shoulder. It's resting on the top of the bass here. And you get that tone that you would get if you were putting a sponge or some sort of foam mute under the strings here. Let's move on to the second line, which just introduces the index finger. What we're doing here, though, is just introducing that index finger. So I'm going like this. That starts off the same. But I've got the mute, and then the G on the 5th fret of the D string. Now, depending on what's going on with your nail, I like to keep my nail quite short there, so I get a similar sound to the fleshy part of the thumb. Introducing the index finger makes it a little bit more like traditional alternate plucking between the index and middle. So you can get more dexterity going there. Here it is again. And then it's all thumb at the end. The final line introduces the middle finger, like this. Now, you can choose to mute a string or not. Sometimes, on this bass anyway, I feel like I'm catching it and sometimes getting a slightly undesirable sound. So I didn't actually mute the G string at all there. But what we have here is we have each digit assigned to a string. So I have an E. I'm playing that with my 3rd finger, 7th fret A string. The G on the 5th fret of the D string, I'm using my 1st finger for that. And then I'm using my little finger for the 7th fret D, which is on the G string. That's actually a chord, it's an E-7 chord. Those are the notes within this bass line. And you can see that you have thumb on the A string, index on the D string, and you have the middle on the G string. I think this is where the technique comes into its own, amongst other reasons actually. If you have a digit dealing with each individual string. You can do notes at the same time, which is great for chords, or kind of fast playing like that. Going back to the simple line, it's this. Just make sure that your thumb is on the A, your index is on the D, and your middle is on the G string. And you can just be free to mute or not mute, but I think that's part of the technique, to mute. You don't have to, though. That's a little faster than you might play it, so slow it right down. Finally, we have the line I played at the beginning, which brings in all of the different fingers on different strings. It goes like this. So there are a couple of different ways to do it. Probably should have mentioned this before, but the P underneath the note stands for pulgar, which is thumb in Latin. The I is index and the M is middle. So just follow those, and if you were to do that, you'd get this. So I'd be happy with that. But you can use your thumb for the first D on the second bar, or use your index. It's up to you. The index just gives me a bit of time to move. Or you could use index, index, thumb, index. So it doesn't really matter. Let me play that with a drum beat. I was toying with making this double the speed like this. And you can play like that if you want, but I decided to make it a little bit easier for this lesson and have just quarter notes, eighth notes. Make sure you're tapping your foot. Make sure you're very clear in your mind as to the fact that those are quarter notes, and then doubling. Doubling gets you the eighth notes. If you're tapping your foot lands on the beats. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it comes up on the off beats, and you have to catch a lot of those off beats in this lesson. 2, 3, 4. Let me slow that down. 1, 2, 3, 4. You heard I choked the G string a bit too much. The note didn't really come out. That's why sometimes I don't even bother muting down there. But you can. I could alter my position a bit. There. For me, I'm feeling the pressure there. That's what I need in order to mute that G. I'm going to finish this lesson by telling you how you might use this in what sort of situations. And I tell you what, you hear this a lot in simulating an upright double bass. A bass guitar is never going to sound like that, but often you can just palm mute and just use your thumb for walking bass lines. See, it sounds a bit more like an upright. And there I'm just concentrating on the thumb. If you are playing walking lines or anything with that sort of pulse, you don't really need the index in the middle. So you can just palm mute. And that has a really good tone. Where I think it comes into its own is where you do have chordal playing, and you're either playing chords like this kind of thing, that kind of thing, or you're playing those same notes but a bit more like a bass line and not playing them as chords. Drop a comment below if you want me to do a follow-up, and I can show you how to do that sort of thing. E natural minor. Right, so if you know those notes, you can play notes within that scale to find chords, or just play individual notes from that. Just playing with notes from E natural minor and using this technique, and it's forcing me into different ways of thinking and playing. That's why I like sometimes practicing different techniques. It makes you play in different ways. Like I said though, comment down below if you want me to do follow up with that kind of thing. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.